Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't born into power. He wasn't a king, a warrior, or a wealthy merchant. He was a civil servant in Florence, a man who watched the chaos of politics unfold from the sidelines. But what he lacked in status, he made up for in insight. Machiavelli saw through the masks of rulers and diplomats. He understood something most people didn't. Power isn't about being good, it's about being effective. In the early 1500s, Italy was a battlefield of ambition. City-states like Florence, Venice, and Milan were constantly at war, and foreign powers like France and Spain were circling like vultures. Machiavelli lived through betrayals, invasions, and political purges. He was imprisoned, tortured, and exiled. And in that exile, he wrote The Prince, a book that would change the way the world thinks about leadership forever. The Prince wasn't a guide for saints. It was a manual for survivors. Machiavelli didn't care about morality in the traditional sense. He cared about results. He argued that rulers should do whatever it takes to maintain power, even if it meant lying, cheating, or using fear. "It is better to be feared than loved," he wrote, "if you cannot be both." That sentence alone has echoed through centuries of politics and business. But here's the twist. Machiavelli wasn't telling people to be evil. He was telling them to be realistic. He believed that humans are selfish, unpredictable, and easily manipulated. So if you want to lead them, you need to understand how they really work, not how you wish they worked. That's where dark psychology begins. Today, psychologists use the term Machiavellianism to describe a personality trait. People high in Machiavellianism are strategic, calculating, and emotionally detached. They're not impulsive like psychopaths or self-obsessed like narcissists. They're planners. They play the long game, and they often win. Think about the last time someone charmed their way into a promotion, or twisted a story to make themselves look better. That's Machiavellianism in action. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. Machiavelli's ideas didn't die with the Renaissance. They evolved. His principles show up in corporate boardrooms, political campaigns, and even social media. The influencers who carefully craft their image. The CEOs who make ruthless decisions behind closed doors. They're all playing the game Machiavelli described. And here's the question: are you playing it too? Before we go deeper into the tactics Machiavelli laid out, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. If you're fascinated by the psychology of power, manipulation, and influence, this is where we break it all down. Hit that button so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's move from the man to the method. What exactly did Machiavelli teach about manipulation? How do his strategies work in real life? And why do they still hold up after 500 years? Let's find out. Machiavelli didn't just observe power, he dissected it. He saw how leaders rose and fell, how alliances crumbled, and how loyalty could be bought or broken with a single move. His genius wasn't in creating chaos, but in understanding how to survive it. And from that understanding came a set of principles, tactics that still echo in boardrooms, politics, and everyday life. The first law is simple but unsettling. Appear virtuous, act strategically. Machiavelli believed that people judge based on appearances, not reality. So if you want power, you must look honest, kind, and noble, even if you're making ruthless decisions behind the scenes. Reputation is armor. It protects you while you maneuver. Think of public figures who smile for the cameras while pulling strings in private. That's not hypocrisy, it's strategy. The illusion of virtue creates trust, and trust creates access. Once you have access, you can influence outcomes without resistance. The second law is control perception. Machiavelli knew that truth is fragile. What matters more is what people believe. If you can shape their beliefs, you control their actions. This is why modern manipulators use media, branding, and storytelling to craft their image. They don't just tell people what to think, they show them what to feel. And once emotions are involved, logic fades. The most powerful leaders aren't just persuasive, they're theatrical. They understand that perception is reality, and they use that to their advantage. Whether it's through carefully staged photos, selective transparency, or dramatic speeches, they build a version of themselves that people want to follow, even if it's a mask. Next comes divide and conquer. Unity is dangerous to those who seek control. Machiavelli advised rulers to stir conflict among rivals, to keep them distracted and weak. This tactic shows up in workplaces, politics, and even families. When people are busy fighting each other, they're not challenging the one pulling the strings. It's cold but effective, and it works best when done quietly, through whispers, rumors, and subtle favoritism. The goal isn't to destroy relationships outright, but to fracture them just enough to prevent cohesion. Once divided, people become easier to manage, easier to manipulate, and easier to silence. The fourth law is use others as tools. Machiavelli didn't believe in loyalty for loyalty's sake. He saw relationships as strategic assets. If someone can help you achieve your goal, use them. If they become a threat, remove them. This sounds harsh, but it's a mindset that thrives in competitive environments. People who rise quickly often know how to delegate, manipulate, and discard without guilt. They don't build teams, they build ladders. Every person is a rung, and the climb is what matters. This law isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. Machiavellian thinkers don't get emotionally entangled. They stay focused on outcomes, and they treat relationships as transactions. Finally, there's strike decisively. Hesitation is weakness. Machiavelli warned that waiting too long to act can be fatal. When the moment comes, whether it's to seize an opportunity or eliminate a threat, you must move with precision and confidence. This law is about timing. The best manipulators don't just know what to do, they know when to do it. And they don't ask for permission. They understand that windows of opportunity are brief and that boldness often wins where caution fails. Whether it's launching a campaign, making a deal, or confronting a rival, decisive action sends a message. You're in control. These 5 laws aren't just historical curiosities. They're alive. You see them in the influencer who curates every post, the executive who reshuffles teams to maintain control, the politician who spins narratives to stay in power. Machiavelli's tactics are subtle, adaptable, and disturbingly effective. They don't rely on brute force, they rely on psychological finesse. But here's the uncomfortable part. You've probably used some of these tactics yourself. Maybe without realizing it, maybe to protect yourself, maybe to get ahead. That's the power of Machiavellianism. It's not just about others. It's about you. It's the quiet calculation behind a compliment, the strategic silence in a meeting, the timing of a favor. It's the part of you that knows how to play the game, even if you don't admit it. And once you recognize these laws, you start seeing them everywhere. In conversations, in negotiations, in friendships. The world becomes a chessboard and every move has meaning. You begin to notice who's positioning themselves, who's pulling strings, and who's being played. Now that we've explored the tactics, the question shifts. Should you use them? Is it possible to play the game without losing your integrity? Or does power always come at a cost? Let's go deeper. Let's look at the moral tension behind these strategies and how to protect yourself from being manipulated by those who use them without conscience. You've seen the laws. You've seen how they operate in the real world. And maybe, just maybe, you've recognized a few of them in your own behavior. That's the unsettling part about Machiavellianism. It's not just a theory about others. It's a mirror. It reflects the parts of us that calculate, adapt, and sometimes manipulate to survive. But now comes the real question. Should you use these tactics? It's tempting. In a world that rewards results over intentions, Machiavellian strategies can seem like shortcuts to success. They offer control, influence, and protection. They help you navigate messy relationships, climb professional ladders, and avoid being taken advantage of. And let's be honest, most people don't play fair. So why should you? That's where the moral tension begins. Machiavelli himself didn't write The Prince as a guide for villains. He wrote it as a survival manual for leaders in a brutal world. He believed that good intentions alone couldn't hold a kingdom together. You needed strategy. You needed flexibility. And sometimes you needed to do things that looked bad to achieve something greater. But where do you draw the line? Using Machiavellian tactics doesn't automatically make you a bad person. It depends on your intent. Are you manipulating to harm or to protect? Are you controlling perception to deceive or to lead effectively? Are you dividing people to dominate or to prevent conflict? These questions matter, because the same tactic can be used to build or destroy, depending on the hand that wields it. Psychologists often talk about adaptive versus maladaptive Machiavellianism. Adaptive Machiavellians are strategic but empathetic. They understand human behavior, but they don't exploit it recklessly. They use influence to guide, not to dominate. Maladaptive Machiavellians, on the other hand, lack empathy. They manipulate for personal gain, regardless of the cost to others. They treat people as disposable. And over time, they erode trust, relationships, and even their own stability. So how do you protect yourself from falling into the darker side? Start by being aware. Awareness is the antidote to manipulation, both from others and from yourself. When you understand the tactics, you can spot them. You can pause before using them. You can ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this ethical? Is this who I want to be? Next, build boundaries. Machiavellian tactics thrive in environments where people are passive, unaware, or overly trusting. If you set clear boundaries, communicate openly, and stay grounded in your values, you become harder to manipulate. You also become a more conscious strategist, someone who can play the game without losing their soul. And finally, remember that power isn't just about control. True power comes from clarity, confidence, and connection. You don't need to deceive to lead. You don't need to divide to succeed. You can be strategic and still be authentic. You can be persuasive and still be honest. That's the balance Machiavelli never fully explored, but you can. The Machiavellian mind is sharp, observant, and unflinching. It sees the world as it is, not as it should be. But that doesn't mean you have to become cold or ruthless. It means you have the tools to navigate complexity, to understand people, to protect yourself, and to lead with both strength and wisdom. So the next time you're in a negotiation, a conflict, or a moment of decision, pause. Think. Ask yourself, am I reacting or am I strategizing? Am I being true to myself or just playing a role? That's where real power begins. And if you've made it this far, you're already thinking like a strategist. You're not just watching, you're reflecting. That's rare. That's valuable. And that's exactly the kind of mind Machiavelli would respect. Now, imagine what happens when you combine insight with integrity, strategy with empathy, influence with purpose. That's not just Machiavellian, that's transformational.